All right, so it's 3 p.m. and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are all set to begin with another stimulating session on connecting the dots. First of all, we would like to thank our esteemed speakers for being part of this panel discussion. Welcoming Dr. Debjani Roy, Chief HR Officer, Mind Your Fleet, Ms. Hina Damija, Head of Human Resources, Religare Broking Limited, and Mr. Setu Shah, Global HCM Product Strategy Director, Oracle. So we had a third panelist, Mr. Jigar Avlani, but due to unforeseen circumstances, he couldn't make it. In today's interconnected world, managing talent in the global economy has become a critical aspect of business success. As companies expand their operations across borders and compete on a global scale, the ability to attract, develop, and retain talented individuals has a significant impact on organizational performance. This article explores key strategies and best practices for effectively managing talent in the dynamic and diverse global economy. Our esteemed panelists would share their views on this insightful topic, managing talent in the global economy. HRAI welcomes you all to the session on connecting the dots. To know more about HRA and its events, I would request all our participants to visit the link and details posted in the chat window. It would be great to have all the participants' feedback. We will be running a poll before the Q&A session. I request all participants to give your feedback on the session. I now take the privilege of introducing our moderator for the session, Mr. Setu Shah, Global HCM Product Strategy Director, Oracle. Mr. Setu works in the Global Product Strategy team for Oracle HCM product at Oracle. He has helped many organizations globally on their digital HR transformation journey, ranging from a headcount of 99 to 5 lakh plus, driving better experience, effectiveness, and efficiency. He has worked with premier organizations like KPMG, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Oracle. In his professional life of over 18 years, he has been engaged in solution architecture, business process reengineering, technology, practice leadership, HR transformations, and project management of large initiatives across varied industries, including banking, professional services, hospitality, manufacturing, healthcare, government sector, etc. He is a technologist at heart with a strong passion for human resources and an astute product strategy acumen. You can also follow him on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Without wasting much time, I hand over the platform to Mr. Setu. Over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot for the warm introduction, Faisal, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks a lot for tuning in today. I take the privilege of asking questions on your behalf to our esteemed panelists and introducing our first panelist, Dr. Debjani Roy, a human resources and L&D professional with 27 years of corporate experience. Debjani Roy is known in the industry as a truly transformational HR stalwart with a career profile to match. A true business leader, an administrator, and an authentic people person, Debjani has donned many professional hats in her almost 3 decades long management career. Currently, besides being the chief HR advisor to Mind Your Fleet, a reputed software startup in transportation space, Debjani runs her own boutique HR solutions and advisory firm called Wings Beneath the Wings Venture LLP. You can follow her on LinkedIn. The link is shared in the chat below. Welcome, Debjani. Our second panelist today is Ms. Hina Damija. Hina is a prominent figure in the field of human resources, currently serving as HR head at Religare Broking. With a strong background in human resources management, talent acquisition, and employee development, she has made significant contributions to the growth and success of organizations. Hina is an IIM alumni and holds a bachelor's degree in human resources from a reputable institute. She has worked with several renowned organizations, honing her skills in talent management, employee engagement, and organizational development. Hina is known for her strong interpersonal skills and her ability to build strong relationships with employees at all levels. She believes in fostering a collaborative and inclusive work culture where employees feel valued and motivated to achieve their full potential. Her LinkedIn link is in the chat. Feel free to follow and connect with our speakers post our session today. Coming to our session, global economy continues to be under pressure for one or the other reason. And this has been the case since a few years now. And while we have been having a few jubilant moments here and there, the ride has kept all of us on the edge. The fragility of post pandemic recovery shows that the era of complexity is not over. Organizations are constantly at a crossroads where risks and opportunities intersect in unexpected ways. And this is the new reality. Whether we call it the great resignation or the great reassessment, a fundamental change in people's values is underpinning a structural shift in the labor market. And with that, I have my first question for Devjani. Devjani, how has the global economy and global workforce changes influenced talent demands as per your experience?
Thank you, Setu. And thank you, HRAI, for the opportunity to be on this platform again and addressing so many youngsters across. It's always nice to be discussing topical issues, which HRAI always manages to conjure up. So thank you. Yes, Setu, you're absolutely right when you say that some of the things that we have experienced in the recent past, I would say in the last 36 months or so, a little more than that, has brought about a sea change in the way office goers and corporate people used to approach their life. I have coined a phrase which brings a little bit of a smile on everybody. We've all heard about BC and AD, right? When we talk about Christ. So BC used to be before Christ, and A is Anno Domini. I always call it now before COVID and after disruption. So, the reference to Christ is now absolutely, out of the box because so much has happened since then. Now, you see, the workforce remains pretty much the same, except that during those 36 to 40 months, that honestly, I don't think any one of us would have thought we would have lived to see that in our lifetime, changed the kind of perspective completely from the way we used to approach a corporate life, getting up in the morning, getting ready, moving into our cars, trudging to the office, walking down carpeted corridors, moving into our cabins and settling down and over a hot cup of coffee, sort of waving out to your colleagues, and the day started off. And then the rest of the 8 to 10 hours were taken up with meetings, brainstormings, all kinds of happenings, and you looked forward to when the clock would strike about 7:30, and you'd pack up to sort of leave for home. And leaving for home didn't quite mean that you left your office behind. Rather, you just took those parts of the thoughts with you, which you could mull over so that to get ready for the next day. Okay. So that was typically how office was like. And you had gotten so used to looking at your colleagues, looking at your teams, being co-located with them out of the same space. And then, woe behold, came this new phenomena, the pandemic that we underwent, and there was a complete sea change, a paradigm shift in the way we started approaching work life. A very simple one. IT, the IT and ITES sector being a big one in our country since quite some time now, work from home was a more, it was rather an exception and never a rule. Okay. Either you had to be a very vaunted, feted high performer who could make a demand for a sabbatical and, say that I'd like a few days off. And if you don't mind my, sort of few days off, that I'd rather work from home because there are some pressing issues I've got to attend to. I've got to, or maybe I have to fly out and be a part of an event. So you have to be really a top of the class niche employee to be able to get an approvals for something like that. Okay. Otherwise, work from home, my God, it was quite a question mark. And then suddenly it was there at your doorstep, right? It was so much at the doorstep that you were staring at a whole workforce who were told strictly not to move into the workplace, who were told that there would be new forms of work life, there would be new practices of the workplace that will be coming into place. We were looking at each other, meaning, the so-called managers and senior leaders and top management suddenly found themselves cross-footed because it was a different ball game altogether. That when you're co-located with a team, it's much easier to handle every aspect of the work life and the do's and the don'ts and the productivities and the metrics. Everything was so easy to address. Whereas suddenly there was this vacuum, and you were talking to a faceless entity, okay, and yet you had to hone them, you had to bring them together, you had to make sure that performance did not fall. You'd also make sure that the group remained motivated. And at the end of the day, there were so many other challenges. I don't even want to get into those, but the challenges of trying to set up a home, a technology base at home, to be able to, become part of a virtual entity, 24/7 calls, meetings, handling family at the same time, sitting inside your homes. It really was a very, very different time which hit us all of a sudden. And along with that, I think came the realization that if we had to sort of enable ourselves into becoming leaders of tomorrow, workmen of tomorrow, we also had to shift gear into becoming digitally educated, because it was no longer sitting in a corporate boardroom. It was no longer the blackboard. It was no longer the PPTs anymore, but it had to be a far more digitally optimized group of people who needed to understand how to be in sync online at every moment, doing meetings to brainstorming to productive assignments to what have you. So not only was the nature of workforce management undergoing a change and had obviously perforce made us look up and think about, now where do we go from here, but it also made sure that our competence levels, our ability to reskill our base so as to be able to now manage the groups in a different manner also became uppermost in our mind. So I would say caliber, competence, and a conscious way of handling the workforce suddenly in the midst of this entire new genre that came into being presented the current set of challenges, which I don't think we've yet seen the last of. We're still in the midst of it. We have got the hang of some part of it, but there's still a lot that we need to look at. So that's how I would put my perspective to this question. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Devjani. We'll definitely remember BC and AD as before COVID and after disaster, right?
Disruption,
right? My next question is for Hina. What are the top 3 key talent trends you have observed in 2022-23? And if you could share any prominent impact that has had in your experience.
Hi, Setu and HRI. Thanks for giving this platform to directly come up to your question about the top key talent. When we talk about, there are various dimensions in terms of managing a talent. be it a risk factor, be it culture, decision, performance, giving the authority for decision making, giving the benefits, be it monetary or non-monetary. The list is long. Out of the list, and culture is one of the important factor, what Ms. Roy has just shared. Yes, COVID has given us the impetus on the importance of culture. So other than the points what Ms. Roy has shared, I would like to highlight what are the three key talent. First is talent acquisition strategy. So when I say talent acquisition strategy, why it is important? First of all, when we look back and sit, it is important to develop an effective talent acquisition strategy. Have a healthy mix of talent acquisition, that how we are going to attract a talent, and unleashing all the technology base. So we have a good choice nowadays to explore the talent and potential which is there across the country, outside also. It is important that we should have a healthy use of these platforms. Plus, when I talk about having a healthy mix of talent acquisition, it is important. One more factor to pay an attention is, I would say, industry mapping. So it is a mix using of portals, one-to-one connects, hiring partners, and nevertheless, headhunting and industry mapping is very important. When we have all this mix, so the kind of talent we will attract to, it will be a combination and would directly relate to the company's vision and requirement. This I see as one of the first important. It may sound basic, but that remains. This is still one of the key talent trend to attract. And second, I would move on to manage the retention strategies for this talent. Again, when I say talent acquisition and talent retention, both are interrelated. It is important for an organization, to pay an equal attention to have the best practices for retaining a talent. So retaining a talent, is again the mix of multiple factors. We talk about understanding who you have hired. Are they engaged? Are they being given a proper task? They able to meet those targets, goals, their achievements, and what is that which will help them continue to engage with us to retain? So retention is a very bigger term. Not only merely we talk about, in the era of the great resignation, as Setu you started. So we know the attrition is very high. Now we would not say in some of the industries, but yes, many of the industries, be it BFSI, IT being in boom. So we have to have that retention strategy in place once the person is onboarded. That starts with pre-boarding engagement, that how we are engaging our talent, how we are aligning them to the organization vision, how they are feeling linked to an organization, that yes, this is my space, this is how I am going to grow. They able to see their growth path, their career path. So there is lot. What are the opportunities for their future? How you are developing them? So there is lot that can be done, with the regular employee satisfaction surveys. And we should know that, what is the pulse for an organization. So this all includes in the retention strategy. The third key factor, again, revolves around the talent, is the talent development. It is important while we have hired the talent from outside and we work on their engagement, it is important to develop them. So, maybe there may be a question which may come up to you that all my three key trends are interrelated. There are many trends, each one of us have a Google, to search on and to see that there are many topics, and the list is long. But I want to share some of the key trends, which has actually made an impact. So these are top three as, per my limited knowledge, which I, foresee with my experience, in that it is important that who we hire, how we engage, how we retain, and how we develop. When we talk about, talent development, it is important to have a comprehensive plan in terms of what is their development plan, what is my skill requirement for the role, and how we can do the enhancement of those skills so that individual is becoming capable to take the next role or responsibility within the organization. So these are three key talents among many which I would like to highlight.
Thanks a lot, Ina. So talent acquisition strategies, talent retention strategies, and talent development strategies are the three notes that I've taken from this insightful discussion. And just kind of threading there on the same note, skills, I think today, as we speak in a fairly dynamic business environment, is kind of the quotient keeps on changing almost, every with every turn in the industry and with every new innovation in the industry. According to a Niti Aayog report, the gig workforce in India is about 77 lakhs, has been in the last 1 year, and it is projected to increase to approximately 2.35 crores in by the end of this decade, that is 2029 and 2030. So I understand that people or organizations are trying to bridge that gap of skill with different types of workforce or different types of work relationships that an organization has with people. And some of these are digital nomads, gigs, the fractional professionals. So question to you, Devjani, what influence has digital nomads or remote workers, gig workforce, fractional professionals had on workplace, and most importantly, work culture?
Hmm. This is a fantastic question, and it's something which is really after my heart. As you know, I am currently the HR advisor to a startup company, and after having worked for nearly 25 years in large scale solid state organizations, both MNCs as well as Indian companies, where you had a way of work, you had a way, it started with having a manual in place, and there were restrictions and regulations and policy frameworks and what have you that you had to follow, and there was a corporate protocol that you also needed to sort of look at, and so on and so forth. And suddenly, wham, you had this new genre of startups where you were staring at a CEO, for God's sake, who was 28 years of age. Okay. And, what do you call that? Do you call that catching them young? No, because, it wasn't a question of catching anybody young. It was a question of a young gentleman, obviously very erudite, with having an intelligent quotient, a little more than probably average, a sort of getting together with a few like-minded cohorts and putting some good funding together and saying, let's do some business. Okay. And it was breaking all the norms, right? It was breaking the norms of you had to have, number one, salt and pepper hair on your head to be able to be counted as experience with the right kind of exposure. No longer. Okay. Second one, where was the luxury of holding hands and saying, okay, let's take you through a proper onboarding process. Let's give you a little honeymoon period. Let's make sure you settled in and then started becoming productive. Again, if you asked for any of that and you actually were trying to sell that picture to the young guys, who were approaching you for a good, interesting project, they would look at you with incredulous expressions. They almost like, you came from Venus. They don't know where they're coming from. Okay. Um, Again, when you looked at employee culture, when you talked about terms like belongingness, when you talked about longevity, they would look at you and think that the Oxford Dictionary underwent a major rehash. Longevity, for God's sake, when you talked about long service awards, they would look at you and say, you actually had awards for 20 years of service. Okay. Are you sure? 20 years? So, before even we talk about gig workers and the nomadic cohorts, you need to understand that we've moved. We've had to move. It's not that we moved out of our own conscious discovery one fine morning, but because of what we were staring at and the kind of intellectual capital who were coming to us and saying, let's do some business together, you had to actually sit down and have a relook at all the learnings that you had and told yourself, we better unlearn so that we also remain relevant in the current milieu. Because if you did not scale up, then you would not be the kind of person who would be able to possibly appreciate what a gig worker actually brought to the table. So today, I literally revel in the fact that here is a nomadic, gig worker who comes to you and says, I'm not interested in permanent employment. Okay. I can very well do with a 9-month to 12-month contract. I'm looking for an interesting project, okay, with bots and AI and Internet of Things. If you've got something which is happening around that corner, okay, let me work on it. Okay, let's define a few counters. What's the deadline? What's the payoff? And the payoff is generally quite high in that case because it's a subject matter expert that you're really hiring who's coming and giving you that level of productivity. And then at the end of the day, when he's done and you've got your report and you've got your system set up, it's bye-bye again because he's moved on to the next bidder. And you are sitting and thinking, okay, so I've got this one up. Where do I go to and who do I go to for the next one? So this is a very different work milieu today that we're looking at. And similarly, just as a takeaway from what Hina had spoken, the talent acquisition strategy and the talent development strategy has also had to undergo changes. Till yesterday, management graduates were important. Today, let me tell you, just simple graduates are also important. You have large organizations reaching out to undergrad colleges, making pre-placement offers because they want to catch them young. They're looking at molding them into understanding, what the norms of current state working is all about. And they feel that rather than wait for years of management study, you could actually start young and you can develop the skills along the way. So I think, the whole perspective of appreciating that work can happen in multiple ways. For that, you don't need to follow the norms that you have done over the last 5 decades or so. Is a very new thought. It's an exciting thought. I'm not at all saying that every one of the startups and the new guys around the block are successful. Not so. But at the end of the day, it's definitely a new level playing field, and it gives an opportunity for multiple number of people with different skill sets to try them out. So that's the way I look at this one.
Interesting. And I think with that, we just shift gears a little bit and get into a small rapid fire question and answer session. I would appreciate a lot of our participants who have joined as well to use the chat window to possibly answer along with our 2 esteemed guests here. So my first question is, which people insights or metrics would you want the CEO or the COO to focus more? And please feel free to answer in 1 or 2 or 3 words. I'll firstly start off with Hina.
Employee engagement.
Okay. Devjani, your thoughts? Which metric would you want the CEOs or the CEOs to focus more on?
Well, if I look at metrics, I wouldn't really go into describing something at an org level to start with. I would rather focus more on the individual level. And I'd say if I were the CEO or the learning head or the CHRO, I would look at agility. I would look at agility to come in a big way, because if you had agility in people, you would go about creating a culture of agility. I need people who are quick thinking. I need people who can possibly look at applying common sense, which has become so uncommon in the recent past. So, those are some of the things: agility, resilience, to be able to adapt themselves quickly and shift gear like you've just done with the rapid fire is what is the need of the hour.
Got it. Thanks, Devjani. And would appreciate a few more comments from our audience. What, according to them, could be one of the metrics that the CEOs or the organizations can focus more on. Please feel free to use the chat window.
So since I thought it is a one-word answer, I have just restricted it to employee engagement. Till the time we are getting the answers in the chat box, I would like to answer. Employee engagement is very bigger term.
Yeah.
So at the CEO level, when we see knowing what is happening in the organization, how my employees are, engaged, what they feel. Unless we know all this, we will not able to get the maximum productivity.
Got it. Got it.
I would also possibly just add, it's no longer just engagement. I feel that currently we are moving to a space where it is the employee experience. It's not just to have them, engaged,
Exactly.
but
I agree to you. So by engagement, when I say, it means the whole journey, the experience of an
yeah,
individual.
that's very, very important. And the other one that I'd be very concerned about, given what we have gone through, and given the fact that we are very tuned and very active today in sensing out where things can go wrong, wellness would be a metric that I certainly would want to look out for in the overall, culture of an organization. And wellness could be of different kinds. It can be expressed in different ways, but per se, the journey or the experience of an individual coming to work in the morning, feeling alive, remaining motivated, and going home satisfied is what I would determine wellness as.
Yeah, again, this is a long list. When we talk about, it is not only the physical wellness, but mental well-being, ability to understand the things, at the individual level, organization, have an idea and purview that what is the pulse of my organization, how employees are feeling, and why so that productivity can be pulled in, so that employee can be engaged in, because all this will lead to retention.
Thanks, Devjani and Hina. We have an interesting perspective that coincides yours as well, from Sarita in our audience, who says, a happy workplace, physical and mental well-being, problem-solving abilities, anticipate and resolving it, and employee satisfaction score, so ESAT. So thanks a lot. And culture is another one. All right. Jumping on to the next one. So as per one of the studies that I read last week from Page Insights for talent trends in 2023, specifically targeted towards India, it kind of came across a number like 55% of people found a new job since the start of pandemic. And this kind of tells us that while talent acquisition has possibly done a great job, talent retention hasn't. So this brings me to my next question to Hina. How do you foresee organizations balancing their focus on talent acquisition versus retention and enrichment? Because, I mean, one is obviously backfill of positions, but then again, there are newer roles, newer challenges, and newer initiatives that an organization ends up picking up, because of which at times you may want to acquire skills from outside, while talent enrichment or upskilling is a way out. But then again, you also have another aspect of competing in a market where you end up losing a lot of skills to the market or to your competition as well. So how does, in your perspective, organizations balance these two or three aspects of talent acquisition versus retention and development?
It's $1 million question, Setu. So, which most of the organization and the HR people and the management team, thinks. So, I'm sharing my perspective to the same. Talent acquisition and talent retention, both are the part of talent strategy. In fact, indeed, they are quite related. If we see how they are quite related, what is my strategy for talent acquisition? For a resource, now I'm sowing a seed. That seed will convert into a plant as a retention, I consider. So if there is a classic example of having focus on the talent acquisition, which includes onboarding, pre-onboarding experience, onboarding experience, and getting the person on board, employee experience, that will automatically lead to the retention. Going back in much detail and having an idea, I would say for organization, again, and for every individual or a leader, it is very difficult to say that which is more important or relevant and how to balance it out, because that varies from industry to industry and role to role. What happens when we talk about having a talent from outside? It is the business drive that we need to infuse a fresh talent, fresh blood, to see that what are the best practices in the market which can be adapted. In addition to what I shared, when we are acquiring a talent in addition, for a particular role, that talent acquisition will automatically a nourishment and lead to talent retention. But at time, talent retention becomes difficult. Why talent retention becomes difficult? Because there are certain, we know the, wave of great resignations, last year, which we had. And attrition is very common in certain industries. I am not getting into the detail of the percentages. It varies from industry to industry, But in the era of the great resignation and the opportunities outside, if we go and look at retaining all the talent, at time it becomes very costlier, because the high pots, get the opportunity outside again and again. It is not that may get, but they get. That's a real fact. So if they are getting an opportunity outside again and again and meeting those percentages beyond certain level, to a particular role, the cost become very hefty. So at that time, it is not wise to retain that talent unless that talent can be, used into some other role. But in that case, talent, acquisition would play a role. So it is a mix. Would say certain organizations which are very flat, where the mass numbers are not required to work in, talent retention plays a wonderful role. And the attrition percentage is less than 10% or so. But when we come to the industries where we need a lot of manpower, especially where we work into the retail sector, reaching out to the mass customer, we have the huge numbers which are required to meet the organization vision, mission, and the targets. There, it's obvious to have the double-digit attrition in place in the organization, and that cannot be solely met with retention, but we have to have a mix with the talent acquisition also.
Agreed. Agreed. Thanks a lot for sharing your perspective. This kind of brings me to my next question that I heard a saying from Josh Borson: who we hire, how we pay, who we promote, and how we organize our companies are all built on fundamental building blocks of skills. How would you make skills pervasive within your organization or within your HR transformation journey in your organization to kind of solve business problems? I mean, Devjani, you may want to pick the bait first on this one, and then we'll have Hina's view on this as well.
So, I would approach this a little differently, okay, in a sense that I truly believe that we are slowly but steadily moving out of that thought process where the whole aspect of talent strategy needs to be only seen from the glasses of retention and attrition, being two sides of the same coin. One of the things which we need to keep in mind is, along with becoming digitally all pervasive and educated, and understanding what online, what dispersion, all of that really brings to us, is another very enhanced skill set which we have launched upon, and that is being analytically savvy. I think analytics is something which HR was bereft of for quite a few years. We've been late runners. Okay, we've caught up very late, but the data was always there. Now, if you ask me, attrition per se is not something which is totally bad for an organization, right? Attrition sometimes actually enhances the ability for an environment to quickly shed its dead weight and cope up with better insights from the market. Okay, if you have a system in place whereby you can do that kind of churn on a regular basis and make sure that your assessment centers, your ability to understand what kind of competencies you need to hire and look at from time to time, depending on which area, which direction the business is heading into, then it gives you a lot of agility. And it also gives you quick thinking, decision making, and better performance all around. So I would say that when we look at attrition, we don't need to look at attrition as a single figure. What we need to look at attrition as a figure is which part of that figure, which we typically quote as a per year figure, is a regrettable loss. That's how we need to understand that, there is some part of the attrition which is most welcome. There is some part of the attrition which, if we didn't have, we wouldn't know, because it would be again, a bit of a culture issue where people would be backstabbing. They would be, they would not be alive to the environment, where they would be stagnating, not being able to take on roles, but the organization still would keep paying high because, it becomes a year by year kind of a vicious loop. So I think analytics is an important area we need to look at, because that helps us look at most of these so-called sub-functions of HR in a very, very pruned down and objective manner. So we need to look at the data. We need to look at where it takes us forward and where does it restrict us. Because if that is the way we look at things, then we can form a strategy on different pillars from what we have done till now. So another example to tell you how analytics is helping us today. A lot of organizations, and especially a couple of organizations where I used to large scale towards my CHRO roles, we had stopped holding exit interviews completely, because we realized that exit interviews were not helping us except to gather data, which were, again, just like in a Provident Fund office, it used to keep, building up in every corner. We also had amalgamated tremendous amount of paperwork. But then what we started is stay interviews. And I'm talking about a time which is almost 7-8 years back. It's only today that people are actually talking about stay interviews. But I remember my team and me, we started doing this almost 7 years back in a company called Quoney. which was the world's largest travel management organization. So, it was so fine because we could put a finger on the pulse, and we could very well, through a very methodical way of processing, we could find out who were the employees who were worth retaining, who were the ones who were getting edgy, who were the ones who were already sitting on the fence, and thereby put our efforts only in the right baskets and not fitter it away as a generic kind of a movement all across. So I think, thought leadership, processes have had to also rise up to look at, how best to employ and use those 4-6 pairs of eyes in a much more objective manner than what we used to do some days back.
Agreed. I get your point in terms of firstly having data related to people and skills and profiles, trying to figure out and understand the gaps, having a look at regrettable losses or non-regrettable losses, and then in both the cases, trying to figure out feedback and get a lot more analytical in terms of figuring out insights from it.
Right.
So superb. Thanks a lot for that. Hina, quick perspectives from you as well on skills.
So bang on, Dibyani. In fact, exactly the same views. Gone are the days that HR to look at as a people function and doing the mundane work. Now HR is required and to see from the analytics aspect and be, data driven. If there is a resignation, why? So I agree that just blankly going to an individual asking about and taking an exit interview, what we need to have is the analytics before in hand, and it has to be data driven. Whether the individual was a performer, was there any other triggers? That individual was there into which category? Is it a early exit? Which fence? What was the background? So it is important to have a bent of an analytics and understand before reaching or concluding to any point or any discussion. So I must say, adding on to third point, it is about that, third eye of seeing the things, what is behind the scene.
Couldn't agree more. So one fun thing that I came across recently, somebody told me this, that once you have read a dictionary, every other book is not just a remix. And that's where I think most of the digital transformation that every organization ends up doing, especially in the HR or the back office verticals as well, that kind of goes through a paradigm shift and not a lift and shift. With technology becoming a critical business driver due to increasing demand for innovation across all industries, and with the rise of automation, AI, bots, chat GPTs, as we all hear in the market, how do you balance the need for technology advancements in HR processes with the importance of human touch at work? We all kind of claim that now technology helps us do more, but does it help us do more for every individual in terms of their personalized needs? So that's a question for you, Hina. You may start with it.
So I have a view a little different on this, that technology can never take a place in all the prospects, when it talks about a human touch.
True, definitely. It's more of an augmentation to what we
as the definition itself, human resources. The department or a function is defined as human resources. So managing the humans. If everything can be managed by AI and chatbots, the humans are not required.
Clearly,
There are many examples on it, but I see that, we just have 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
So the list is long to talk on. I would just reserve my thoughts here. I can see some questions pouring in the chat box also.
Yeah, I'll take that up after a quick rapid fire. Thanks a lot, Pooja.
Setu, if you can allow me just a
Yeah,
minute.
please.
The year was 2017, and I was the CHRO of SRL Diagnostics, Fortis Group. And we had 256 labs spread across the length and breadth of the country. And I had a minuscule lean and mean HR department with only 22 people, which was absolutely underpopulated with when it came to representing ourselves in person to all the people across those number of labs. But the expectation that the employees had is one time at least somebody from HR would come down and listen to them. Okay. So whether it was a town hall or it was a common meeting or whatever it was. So in 2017, just to augment the strength of the HR department, we actually took the help of our internal IT department and we developed chatbots. And what we did was we created scripts out of the HR human process manuals, and we loaded them onto the chatbots so that if a common question like, what's maternity, how many days, when can I come back, when can I take it, those could easily be addressed by the employees. And we thought we've done a great job by creating these mechanisms. And lo and behold, again, we had another problem coming up where they said, oh, now we have to talk to a screen. I don't want to talk to a screen. I want to talk to a human person, flesh and blood. Because if my boss is bothering me and I need somebody to listen to my complaint, is the chatbot going to help me explain that level of emotion? Can it actually advise me in that way? So you see, as long back as that, we realized that there was a good place and a not so good place, for what we call the mechanization and the technology bit in human resource. So there's no way you can take the human out of human resource.
Devjani, a classic example, I will take a minute, to give.
I'll just finish this, my dear. I'll just finish
sure.
this. So at the end of the day, we actually came up with a calendar program where we had regular visits by HR people commensurate with the chatbots, where they came in addressing queries which did not require a human presence. And that even today is, I think, working quite well. Yes, Ina.
Thanks a lot,
So,
Devi.
the classic example, half a minute will take and share.
Go ahead, please.
I have got a feedback from the employees of this classic example, like mother is in the house, the same role HR plays in the organization. So that any chatbot or AI can never take.
Definitely.
Yeah, true. Absolutely.
Thanks a lot. Amazing perspectives on technology and human touch. I have two quick rapid fire questions more, and then we have a few questions on the chat as well that we'll take. So again, here this time the rules are only 1 to 3 words for both Hina and Devjani. And people on the chat, please feel free to answer your to share in your perspective. So the first question is, which emerging technology do you believe has and will have most impact in managing talent? You can name one each. So
People analytics.
Yeah, sorry. Hina says analytics. Okay.
No, I agree. I think analytics will come in a big way, and I see a lot of change in L&D.
L&D.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anything on by our audience? I'm happy to call it out. All right. The next one is, which skill do you want the HR professionals and people managers, because they are not the so-called mothers, but they are something that somebody that employees do look up to. Would you want them to harness more? Any skill that you would want these two personas to harness more to effectively manage talent, especially in the current day and age, in the current state of global economy?
Two things, according to me. As I said, common sense. Okay. Sometimes we lose simplicity in our approach because we overlook common sense. And the second is application science. HR is not about theory. HR is how do you make that theory work within people through your application skills. So application skill is very important, which unfortunately our universities don't teach.
Agreed. Agreed.
I have 2 points on it. One is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence refers to the ability to understand and manage the emotions. I feel this is the foremost and important skill for an HR to build in. Relationship building and decision making.
Thank you. Thank you, Hina. I think with this, I'll hand it over back to Faisal before taking some of the questions on the chat by Neha, Pooja, and other audience members. So Faisal, over to you. We have had amazing insights from all of our speakers, and thanks a lot for this opportunity. We'll take up the questions in a while.
Thank you, Setu. So before we move to the Q&A round, we will be running a poll to have the participants' valuable feedback on this session. During this time, we request all the participants to feel free and put their questions in the chat window. So we can start, Sidhu. By the time the poll is done, we can start with the questions.
All right. All right. So the first question is from Neha, and we have about 4 to 5 minutes currently on the clock. So please be conversant of the time. So the first question is, how can organizations develop and implement effective talent management strategies that align with the demands of global economy? She has kind of encapsulated, or she wants us to summarize the entire session. So please go ahead, anybody. Hina, would you want to give it a shot?
Yeah, so I'm just reading the question in the chat box once again. How can organization develop and implement a strategy? So, thanks for asking this question, Neha. As rightly said by Setu, it's a gist of whole discussion what we are having past 60 minutes. When we talk about, developing a effective strategy related to talent management, in talent management, it is important to have two prospects. One is talent acquisition and another is talent retention. And third piece, I would say, which I have touched upon, was talent development. These all are interrelated, and it is a combination of a talent management strategy. I consider talent acquisition also as a talent management. Once the talent is there on board, when we are hiring a talent, it is important to identify that what are the skills we require.
True.
Is it matching? And then onboarding them and giving an experience which will lead to retention. The list is long, Neha. In terms of, all the 3 points, I will quickly touch upon two things. Again, in talent acquisition, it is important to have a detailed job description and skill set in place before we go ahead and look for a talent outside. So for talent management, this is the first and foremost strategy, that what skill we are looking for. Important to have a JDs in place and go for any position. We should not restrict ourselves for a particular hiring source. We should be open. Starting from portals, consultants, partners, there are multiple portals nowadays doing a market mapping, industry mapping. Everything plays an important role. We should not restrict ourselves for going via particular source. This I would say for talent acquisition strategy. When it comes to talent retention, which is the second phase of talent management or piece of talent management, in talent retention, it is important that we see that the talent which we have hired, how a next role can be given. So one of the classic example which most of the organization follow, I would give, because there are n number of effective talent strategies, but considering the time, I would just pick one. Having a promotion in place for an individual is one of the classic example for talent management, which every individual and organization look that we are having a high pot and we are doing our important fills in the organization from within the talent pool. When we have a talent, promotion in place, most of the individuals think at a base level that it is an individual performance which is important. And if the individual is performing, basis that individual performance, we see that an individual can be given a team manager's role. But that is, a wrong way to do, because there is a specific skill which is required to manage a team. An individual who is very good in terms of an individual performance may not be a superb leader. So here, when you are managing your talent and looking for a promotion cycle, there are certain skills which are required for an individual contributor to move up the ladder also. So promotion is not only that giving a team manager role, but giving the higher responsibilities, which requires a different set of skill and enhancement. So an example is dealing with a retail customer or dealing with an HNI customer.
Yes.
The role is same.
Got it.
Doing the selling, but a team leader position comes into a retail sale. An individual who is overachieving a target of 130% every year, consecutive, month on month. So we'll go not on the year base. So past 24 months have achieved. So instead of promoting that individual directly to a team leader level, we need to evaluate those skills. Then JD comes in place and the skills comes in place, that what are the skills required for a supervisor. So I understand Setu is looking at the time. We are.
I'm still going to push Setu. Just a couple of words. We have to be global in approach, which means we have to look out for global indices. But at the same time, because it's a people function, we have to also have a look at the local market. We have to create an advantage by continuous competition benchmarking. Because the minute you take your eyes off the competition, you lose track of what skill sets you would ideally want to bring in. So global as well as competition. These are the combination of approaches which will help you hone the skill sets within your own workforce.
Thanks a lot, Devjani. I hope that answered your question, Neha. We have a couple of more. So just checking with Faisal. Faisal, can we pick these two?
Yes, we can.
We can? Oh, great. So Vikas is asking, what do you prefer while hiring a talent for leadership position? Is it attitude or any skill set? A quick question for Devjani.
Loads and loads of skill sets, honestly. I mean, I can't really go on to describe them. Anything that you talk about, it looks like your leader needs to have it. But yes, if you really ask me, the leader today has to be one amongst equals, okay? That's the first important thing to practice. He or she cannot be the kind of leader of yesterday who rules. You cannot be ruling your people. You have to bring about authentic leadership. You have to be genuine in your outlook. You have to be empathetic to what your people are going through. And at the end of the level, all the three, if you combine, it pretty much boils down to attitude and their ability to practice man management in an affable manner. Because skill sets and theories and functional knowledge is hygiene. A person who rises to the level of a CEO are expected to bring that to the table. But if you get a guy who doesn't fit into the right culture and has the wrong kind of an attitude, then you've had it. So I think those are the things to look out for. And any kind of leadership interviews and assessment centers should have a huge laundry basket list of attitudinal game plans, according to me.
Absolutely agreed, Devyani. So Vikas, the answer to your question, as you rightly heard, is attitude or any skill set, both. But obviously, attitude takes a priority, as Devyani just said. All right. The next question is from Pooja. How can organizations attract and retain top talent in highly competitive global economy? I think a major part of this question is something that Hina already covered. But if there is something else, Devyani, that you would want to add here, please feel free.
Well, I think Hina has, as you
Absolutely.
rightly said, comprehensively covered it. But at the same time, I think whichever way the market moves, you've got to make sure that you're also mapping that and making that applicable to your top performers. Because if you lose sight of that again, you will stand to lose suddenly overnight somebody who would have actually given a lot more breadth and depth to your organization. So it's important to keep an eye out on how the market moves and coin your strategy according to that for senior leadership. Thank you.
Great, great. So workforce planning is something that slowly and steadily becomes extremely essential in
Yeah.
our agile form of working, where be it skills, be it profiles, be it qualifications, whatever you feel it's relevant for your organization, pick those, have a plan for it, and accordingly kind of, work on that plan and reassess how close or far you are with your milestones, or even if you have to pivot.
And
The
make sure that you create a map for succession planning. It shouldn't just remain a jargon. Identify the top key position in your organization and keep it an alive heat map so that at every level you can map it into who's an amber, who's a red, and who's a green. And accordingly, keep devising strategies accordingly. I think that's something we miss out on, but that's critical for senior leadership.
Possible. I think with that, you did answer the last question on the chat, which which was from Peterson. Will succession planning help retain and engage high potential talent in a remote and hybrid work culture, and how? Would you want to add something to it?
Well, Sethu, honestly, the how part of it is outside the scope of today's discussion.
Yeah,
It'll
agreed.
take another 1.5 hours. So we will just let it be. But yes, a succession planning applied well and thought through with keeping the key factors in mind and keeping the market definitely on top of your mind will give you that kind of leverage, which needs to take you to the next level.
Great. And I think one of the critical pieces, Peterson, of succession planning or in general talent retention, talent management is also, some of the older norms of job enlargement, job enrichment, and the scope, defining the scope of job. While it is quite flexible and fungible nowadays, and at times even lateral transfers, allowing people to kind of experiment with more roles within your organization itself, if the opportunity lies there. So these could be some of the other perspectives.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think with that we have covered all the questions. One of our audience members has also thanked you all for an insightful session and a great learning experience. I echo that feedback. I have taken a lot of notes from Hina and Devyani. Thanks a lot for an insightful session, and it has been a great learning experience.
It's been a tremendous hearing you, Sethu, maneuver yourself between all of us. Not too easy to handle two women together. So kudos to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Sethu. It's indeed a pleasure to share the platform with both of you. And we too had a great learning, from the insightful questions you would have thrown on us.
Yeah.
Happy to do that, Hina. Thanks a lot to HRAI and our audience as well for being with us, sharing some of their insights and providing us feedback as well. So thanks everyone. Over
Thanks,
to you.
Faisal, for making it happen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Faisal. Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Setu, for taking us through the session and making it interactive and exciting. Thank you, Ms. Devjani and Ms. Hina, for sharing your valuable thoughts and insights with us. It has been a privilege having you all for this engrossing session. To all those who wish to learn and grow, you can access the recording of our today's session on our YouTube link shared in the chat window. Before we conclude with today's session, we would also want to thank all the event partners, Geisha, NASSCOM's UE, Talgro, TLE, WICCI, LinkedIn Local Ahmedabad and India for supporting HRAI events. To know more about these associations, request you to kindly visit the links provided in the chat window. Do join us for our next Connecting the Dots on 15th June 2023. That's it from our today's webinar. Hope to see you soon. Stay safe, take care, and bye for now. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Devjani. Thank you, Ms. Hina.
Bye bye. Bye bye.